Hi, everybody. I'm Laura,
And I'm Allison.
and this is the Earp Top 5 podcast for freedom.
Freedom! Today, we're going to be talking about episode 408, Raisin Good Time. And this episode was written by Caitlin Friars.
So, for those of you who might not know, I hate all things scary, but I love Halloween. It's one of my favorite holidays. I don't know why. I don't like the scary part of it, obviously, but I like the costumes and the trick-or-treating of it all. So this was an interesting episode for me to like.
I think that having a Halloween episode in March and having a Christmas episode in August really makes us special.
Yeah. Listen, who cares about calendars? Who cares about time? Who cares about dates anymore?
We just have the holidays when we want to have the holidays.
That's right. Whatever makes us happy.
So let's just jump right in because this episode had a lot of good moments. And I honestly am surprised that we have had two episodes in a row that were like comical because like I'm expecting to be hit hard with emotions, but I'm loving the upbeat, episodes and the weather just kind of like sets this really, really like happy tone. So I'm actually loving it. However, I want to be hit with the feels. Like I really am like anticipating like, okay, maybe the next episode will hit me. Like maybe maybe it'll be that one.
The angst is coming.
Oh, I feel it coming. So, all right, what's your first?
So I think obviously the majority of this episode was about the Earp sisters. So I'm gonna start with them. But really they kind of took over every part of the episode. It was kind of like the Earp sister train where they went and they were on their own. Then they hit up Casey, and then they went to Doc, and then they went to Jeremy in the end, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to start with them. There's a lot that I could have chosen from. I'm going to choose them post-fog when they lose their memory and they're headed back to the homestead. Number one, Mel and Dom comedic timing in this episode was on point. I think it's probably, and maybe it was because they were playing kind of each other, and so it like breathed new life into like their just exuberance to play a new character or something. But the way they were just playing, Dom playing a version of Wynonna and Mel playing a version of Waverly, it was just really funny. But then they were also kind of playing themselves very like Jeremy said, it was like a mystery wrapped in an enigma wrapped in a mustache, but that was for Doc. But this was the same kind of deal. Waverly, she was like gung-ho about Halloween, spending the day with Wynonna, etc. And then they get back to the homestead, and Wynonna is like, oh, Halloween is the best. And Waverly says, I effing hate Halloween. So that actually stuck out at me because it's like, well, then was she just like playing up like this Halloween thing beforehand because like it was an excuse to spend time with Wynonna? Or was it like, was she like almost the popular term like fake it till you make it kind of thing? For the purposes of this top moment, it was when Waverly puts on Nicole's shirt, deputy shirt. Actually, it wasn't her shower shirt, it was her deputy shirt from season 1. And she was like, oh my God, you were a cop. And then Wynonna picks up the shorty shirt, smells it, and she's like, it smells like whiskey. Sucks it. And she's like, I like whiskey. And then they're like, maybe it's a bar. Maybe you work there. Maybe they're having a Halloween party. And it was just that scene that was like probably like the epitome of like them working this all out, but working it out totally wrong.
Yeah. So when they get to the homestead, because they had to get a map from Casey to get back home because neither knew how to get there. So they get there and they see their picture on the refrigerator and they're like, oh, this is our home. Are we roommates? And then they're like, oh, sisters. And they're like, and Wynonna's like, oh, we live together. How sweet. And my favorite part of them being at the homestead with no memories is that how did Wynonna, she grabs the mail, sees the name Wynonna Earp and Waverly Earp. What was it in her that made her think that Waverly was Wynonna? Because she just picks up the mail, looks at Waverly, and she's like, Wynonna. Like, it's just in her head. She's like,
Waverly says it first. Waverly calls Wynonna Waverly first.
Oh, see, I didn't catch that. I thought Wynonna picks up the mail and like sees Waverly and she's like, you're Wynonna. I was like, how did she come up with that? Like, it could have been a 50-50 chance and she just got it wrong. But
yeah,
we've had so many versions of a non-body swap.
Yeah.
Like last episode, we had the whole like love thing that made people crazy and it was like really making everybody weird. And now we've got this episode that's like a body swap without a body swap for Wynonna and Waverly. Like they swapped places, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one of the things I loved about that was just the fact that you could tell they were playing versions of themselves that had no history, no baggage, no hurt or family history. They didn't know what the Earp name meant when she read that off the envelope. You know, it wasn't that they had to carry this baggage. And so that's my thinking as to why Wynonna especially was just so lighter and like crazier in this episode because she had no understanding of anything she's gone through. And so it made her this version of that.
She only knew that she was broke because those bills were past due. So what's the moment that you have?
So I think that I'm going to go with Doc's speech to Casey when he goes to find, well, first he goes to figure out where the Earps went or what happened to them. And then he goes to find the extractor and he comes across Casey and Casey's being his crazy old self. I was so glad to have him back, by the way. So that was just a fun episode.
This is actually one of my top moments too. So we're good on this.
Yeah, I just loved having Casey back. But so the reason this is one of my top moments this week is because, as I've been saying, I think Doc is on a journey and we're kind of seeing him go through this philosophical, like this process. You know, he's really looking at everything through a different lens and he's literally just so philosophical with everything he goes through. But he goes to Casey and Casey writes this whole speech. You know, this little, and it's the silliest thing. And the last part is P.S. dance like no one's watching. And I'm like, that's great. But Doc starts talking about how the opposite of fear is love. And he's literally been to hell and back. He lost his best friend. He's never even known his own daughter. And he says that all of that fear and loss has been a yoke on his neck, which again, interesting metaphor that I've never heard before, but coming from a man who's that old, it makes sense. But he goes on to say, but the love has lightened the load. So all of the fear and the loss that he's experienced, the love that he has is what's lightened the load. And then he says, my favorite line, not ready to lose my greatest love of all. And he starts to say, like he says the W, like, whoa, the Earp Sisters, of course, like he corrects himself. And I really loved that moment because we're starting to peek through the cracks of Doc. And even though he's mad at Wynonna, you know, he loves her. Like there's no denying that. So I loved being able to kind of see him kind of break a little bit on his anger toward Wynonna and almost confess that to Casey. But in the end, he said the Earp Sisters, which again, I love the fact that he said he loves the Earp Sisters. But anyways, that's one of my favorite moments.
Yeah, that was on my list as well. And both of those quotes that you said, that those were, I have them exactly written down also. But yeah, it's one of those things where, like you said, we've been talking about this. We talked about this with Tim. He's trying to redeem himself and he's trying so hard. And I feel like he feels like nobody's noticing. Even earlier in the episode where like Eamon was trying to get a rise out of him by showing him that like Wynonna left her bra there and everything. He's like, you know what? she's just not on the redemption journey yet. And so instead of, beating the crap out of Eamon or whatever, he walked away. He's like, you know what? These are not my fights anymore. And he's just trying to almost like rectify the world for everybody, like make it a better place for the Earp sisters, for his daughter, for just all the wrongs that happened.
I also think that Doc has kind of realized that the situation cannot be improved and he cannot be redeemed unless he does it himself. Because if you'll remember in 4A, when they're at that weird history museum thing and he sees the video of Wyatt where Wyatt says that, Doc shot first and Doc's like, I did not. And so he realizes that like you can do things in your life and it can still be wrong. It can still be wrong in history. So I think that the redemption, he now knows that it's not going to improve unless he makes an effort to do it himself. And he's on the journey, and he's, I'm sure, hoping that Wynonna hops on the journey with him, but I think that he's in it for himself right now, just trying to let everyone see that he's trying to be better.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Which brings me to my next moment, which my next two moments actually stem from this, but it's him calling Jeremy and Jeremy like giving him the mission that he has to go on, and Doc is right there. He steps up and he does it, which is why he goes to see Casey. But my next moment has to do with Jeremy, and who we find out is the new Robin. Now, everybody was wondering what had happened to Robin at the end of season 3. But what my moment here is that they recast Robin. Justin Kelly, the actor who played him, filmed another show in Newfoundland. I don't know. Please, Canadians,
we're not Canadian.
Don't kill me for the pronunciation. I know there's a certain way you have to pronounce
like Newfoundland.
That's what I think too, right?
Yeah, but you just said it with a New York accent.
That's what I gotta do. So he's on another show. So actually, when you go from Calgary's in the west, when you go, they have COVID protocols and strict quarantine restrictions that if you leave that area, that Newfoundland, St. John area, even like a meter out of it, you have to do a 14-day quarantine. So there was no way that Justin could travel from filming his other show that he does there, which is called Hudson and Rex, if anybody wants to check it out, to then go to do Wynonna in Calgary, and then back and forth. It just wasn't feasible. So they recast, and I was very surprised, but actually pleasantly so, that they decided to recast. And the guy that they recast with, Emily said, is actually friends with Justin Kelly. Also, that he initially auditioned for the role of Robin, but it was like there were like these mannerisms that he had. And even though Robin, the character, had lost his memory because he was in the fog, and what we learned later, which is my next moment, which I'll get to, but he was in the fog, so he lost his memories. But there was like an essence, there was like a Justin / Robin essence that this guy had, that even if you saw, like, you see a different face, you still kind of feel that it is Robin in there. And even the way like Varun and this guy, his name is Jim Watson, I believe, they were playing off of each other was nice. I wanted to find out from you, Allison, was it when Jeremy called him Robin that you figured it was Robin? Was it a little bit before? Or?
It literally took me to the moment he said the name. Like, here's the thing, like I was watching it and I was like, who's this extra character? Are we supposed to know him? Like, what's going on? Because it felt important. Like, they made a point for Jeremy to go to this meeting, and then he starts interacting with this guy. And so I'm thinking, am I supposed to know who this is? What's the significance? Like, who is he? But with that in mind, in the back of my head, I was like, he looks a lot like Justin Kelly. Like, he literally, like, if you look at him with your eyes squinted a little bit to the side, like, he looks like Justin Kelly. And so part of me was just like confused at first because I was like, oh, wow, he looks like Justin, but I have no idea who this new guy is. And then when he said Robin, we were on a Zoom chat with some other friends at the time. And I just looked at everybody and I was like, what? What is happening? Because I had no idea that a show like Wynonna would ever recast anyone. Like
Mhm.
okay, slight admission here. I watch soap operas. I've been watching Days of Our Lives since I was a child.
The role of Robin Jett is now be played by
Yes. Like, okay, my mother has watched Days of Our Lives since she was in college. And so ever since I was born, Days of Our Lives is on the TV every evening while we eat dinner. No joke. I have been watching Days of Our Lives for my entire life. And so I like recasting, not a foreign concept to me. But again, like you just said, usually they announce it in some way or they do something really cheesy to make you realize who it is. But usually that doesn't happen on like primetime,
right.
shows. So I was like slightly confused. I was like, holy cow, I had no idea that they would ever recast anyone on Wynonna. I just figured Robin would be off in whatever land this season, like they kind of said in 4A, where Jeremy was just like, he's safe, don't worry about it. Because I
Yeah.
knew Justin wasn't available. So I just figured they would kind of just write him off that way. But like you said, I'm glad they did though, because I think that having Robin there is important, and many people were interested to know what happened to him. So I'm glad that they decided to find a way to continue the story with Robin, even with Justin not being available.
I'm same as you. I would watch soap operas when I was a kid. My grandmother, who didn't speak English, learned a few choice words in English from soap operas. And yeah, there's either two things. When an adult gets recast, it's just the role of so and so is now to be played by, this other person. When
Or
the
you
thing
get the
comes,
Soros.
right, the Soros.
Soap opera rapid aging
age
syndrome.
right, for the kids, that they go up to the attic to find some skis and they come down with a new face in about age 10 years. Exactly. Yeah. The last time that's happened on a show that comes to my mind is when they recast Becky on Roseanne back in the late 90s or something. On a supernatural show, you would think that it would be more common. But a cast like this are like, this cast is like lightning in a bottle and they all get along. So you would think that there has to be some, like a pandemic reason for not bringing Justin back or not bringing the character back. And like you said, I think the character of Robin, as minor as he was, he does have a significance to it. Now, whether it is him being the catalyst of he went into the fog and this is what happened, and so knowing, but they did need a character to do that, and they, unfortunately it was him. But I just wanted to say that I didn't know. I was like, wait a second, is that Robin? Before they said Robin.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be like one of those people that is like, I knew it all along. But he asked, number one, like, Jeremy had the same like nervous energy as he did when he first met Robin. So that kind of tipped me off. I was like, oh, he's flirting with a new guy. Like, that kind of doesn't make sense, especially like because he just doesn't want people to know about Robin. So that's number one. And then he asked for veggie sticks. And I was like, wait a second. And then but the thing that tipped me off was when he talked about purgatory. And this was like seconds before he said the name Robin. He called him by his name, Robin. But he said, oh, I can't believe I missed my dad's funeral. And I was like, wait a second. And then he called him Robin. I was like, oh, I knew it.
Yeah. So before you jump to the moment that yours is kind of connected to, I'm just going to, because mine is still about Jeremy and Robin, my next moment. So I just want to like add a little bit more to this. But the whole story, and we can talk about the fog after this, but the whole story and everything, there was a moment when Wynonna walks up at the end and Jeremy says, you remember Robin Jett? Like, Wynonna's face is about how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she was like, I thought I did. Like, she looked so confused. And that's like pretty much how I felt when I realized that this was Robin. because she was also very confused because at that moment Jeremy had not explained what had happened, and so she was just like an entirely new human standing in front of me, and this is Robin. And like
Mhm.
Robin wasn't, like you said, he was a slightly minor character compared to the others, but toward the end there he really became a part of the crew, so I'm sure that's why I think everybody was asking what had happened to him at the end, because they were concerned. So I think that seeing this person who did not look like Robin probably instantly hit Wynonna with like this, maybe guilt, maybe sadness, because she could see it on Jeremy's face that it was a
Mhm.
lot of sadness. But the performance that Varun gave in that scene cannot be overlooked, because we have not gotten a lot of stuff
That
like
was my
that.
next moment. That was the moment that I was going to connect it to. But yeah, that was
Sweet.
that.
We're
Yes.
on we're on the same brainwave here.
Yeah.
Like that moment, like Jeremy's not had a whole lot of really raw emotional moments because he's very much like the brainiac problem solver. He's always got a solution type person in this group. But that moment where he just kind of like breaks down to Wynonna and explains what happened, I was like applauding Varun. I was like, this is like
Hmm.
so good. And I'm so like happy that he got a chance to really showcase like that side of himself as a character, because I don't think I've ever seen Varun play, I guess, that emotionally raw. I was
Hmm.
tearing up. It was like a really like impactful moment. And you could see Wynonna looking at him and feeling that and knowing. And she even said, like, I can't believe you took on all of this on your own. Like you
Yeah.
didn't tell anybody you were going through this. So that was my moment. Good job, Varun. We love you.
It really started, the whole episode was when he walked up and he confronted Albert, the replacement to my girl Naomi Haicha. Um which I love it. I mean, that name, I love that. And I'm so disappointed that she couldn't come back either because again for
COVID.
COVID. Yeah.
Yes. Dang
Curses
COVID.
curses COVID.
Yeah.
So but he came up the stairs and he confronted Albert and he's just like, I have this meeting, every Tuesday. And he's like, well, you can't go this. And he's like, no. He's like, I asked for one thing, and that's to have this meeting every Tuesday because gets to meet with Robin, and that's his only time. And he tries every single Tuesday for however long it's been going on. He said he's been putting this kind of like serum into his coffee so that to reverse the effects of what the fog did to Robin and things like that. I don't know why he just hasn't given him a potato. Maybe that'll trigger his memory. But it's also interesting to note that like Robin is working in the accounting department for Black Badge. So I don't know why they're punishing him that way. But sorry, accountants. I'm sure Jeremy had a hand in like getting him a job at Black Badge so he could keep an eye on him, because how else would he have kind of kept an eye on him? And because he didn't work for Black Badge before. And it struck me also that when everybody was asking, especially in front of like Naomi, last time in front of Naomi, Wynonna was like, what happened to Robin? And he tried to like diffuse, like, don't mention Robin, because he was there. Robin was at BBD. And so maybe Jeremy like got him this job under a guise of something else. And if like too much attention was brought to Robin, then they would be like, wait a second, this guy doesn't work for accounting. Like, what is his deal? So, but as you had mentioned about this moment when he revealed everything to Wynonna and he kind of just broke down, it really was, it was the best explanation that I could think of like why he was being so cagey in the beginning about like where
Mm-hmm.
Robin was. And as I just mentioned, he was trying to keep him safe because maybe they would use his relationship with Robin as somewhat of a bargaining chip or something like that.
All right. Are we ready to move on?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go with my next moment. And it's a quick one just because I want to just point it out. But I wanted to make one of my moments all of the costumes in the episode as a moment because again, it's a Halloween episode. I know we have barely mentioned Halloween at all in our top 5 so far.
Yeah.
But this episode was like really fun because we got to see all these characters in different costumes. We get Britney Spears right off the bat, which I love when Wynonna says bring pants. Waverly doesn't actually bring pants.
Yeah.
He brings a Britney Spears skirt, which I thought was hilarious. We get a ladybug, which was just cute. Like Waverly as a ladybug, can't go wrong. You get very like these are costumes, but these are also real things. You get a Shorty's waitress, you get a purgatory deputy, you know?
Yeah.
And then we've got an angel. We've got a Wonder Woman, off-brand Wonder Woman superhero costume. I'm assuming for copyright purposes, they can't exactly use
Wonder Wynonna.
Yeah.
Wonder Wynonna.
And then, of course, you got the iconic Doc Holliday dressed as Freddie Mercury. That costume, man, was just so great.
That was on point. And he sold it. You have him. He had the microphone. And he didn't wear his hat the whole time that he was, and you know Doc loves his hat.
I loved seeing his hair. It was just so lush looking.
Yeah.
It was so great.
It really does. And to know, like, you gotta wonder if he knows who Freddie Mercury is. And I'm sure that some of the music playing in Charlene, because he does like music.
Yeah.
You know, he's a huge Adele fan. I mean, who isn't? But
I think that Tim said in one of the behind the scenes things that he just imagines that like in Doc's downtime, he's like Googling everything about the world in every decade, you know?
Yeah.
Like he's kind of gone through every decade to see like what was big in that time.
Yeah, I could
and
see
he came across Bohemian Rhapsody or something and like just loved it.
Premium Rhapsody, as Wynonna called him.
Yeah.
I agree. I wanted to say something about that, but my next moment, we mentioned him before in the other bits. You mentioned him with Doc. I mentioned him with Wynonna and Waverly. But Casey being back, we saw him. We thought maybe it was just a one-off in episode 403 with the chili cook-off, but he came back this episode, and it was just hilarious to have him back. When he first saw that Waverly and Wynonna were coming after him, he was like, no trick-or-treaters, and he threw something at them. And then Wynonna went knocking at the door, and she's like, it's Brittany, bitch. And he opened the door, and he's like, what up, Sally? He's like, we cooked chili together. Now, we knew he was a demon, but we didn't know what type of demon he was.
Right.
And I don't know if him being the extractor is the type of demon he is, because a few things struck me as odd. So first things first, he opened the can and like some Men in Black light shined out and disoriented the Earp Sisters. So right then, I'm curious if that has something to do with his demon powers.
Right.
The second thing was that he was like burrowed under the picnic table when Doc went to visit him. So again, I don't know if like that has something to do with his demon powers, because he seems to be like an outdoors kind of demon thing. Because everything, now this could also be because they're taking advantage of filming outdoors, because everything seems to be outside for him. So like he had like stacks and stacks of the cans of chili on the table, all other kinds of like snacks and things like that, drinks on the picnic table, and yet he's by himself at the edge of the triangle. I'm curious to know like what exactly his like demonness is, and I think
we're gonna see more of Casey.
I know we're gonna see more of Casey because I had the inside scoop.
All righty, we'll go with it.
Emily herself. No. But yeah, Emily did say that we were going to see him again. So I actually think, and we're not a theory podcast, but I'm going to throw this out there so then I can say I told you so when it comes to me. No, I think actually he was put there at the edge of the triangle to stop people from going into the fog. And so because he had like the whole gas mask set up with the string.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, he had a string attached to himself so he could get back.
Right. So my assumption is that he uses that if in case anybody goes beyond the triangle and gets stuck in the fog, he can go out and quote unquote extract them back into the triangle. So I think
He
because
didn't do a very good job. Wynonna and Waverly.
well, that's I have a theory on that
Okay.
too, where I think because they wanted to take him and he didn't want to be taken. So he took them, he had them follow him into the fog so that their memory would go away for that brief moment. And then when they came back, gave him the story that he just sold them weed and they got super high.
Yeah.
So
So he's like kind of a prankster as well. He put him in there real fast to let it wipe their memory for just a minute. He pulls them out so they don't remember asking to take him.
Right. And
Yeah.
so and then he sent them on their way. And then he went, because when he says in that sweet letter of his, which
Yes, dance like no one's watching.
yeah, he's like, sorry I tricked you. It was a fog or flight mentality or whatever. Wynonna says this conveniently. Waverly found a map in her pocket to get back home. So that's why I was like, oh, okay. So he definitely did that. He probably planted the map in her pocket so that they would be able to find their way back home after he wiped their mind. They asked, when Waverly and Wynonna asked him like what he was so afraid of, and she was like, NCIS, FBI, or whatever she said. And he's like, nah, those would be fine. He's like, unless you were like bad, like Black Badge. So, and then he knew who Agent Chetri was. So I'm really feeling that like he made a deal with Black Badge to get out of jail unless they just let everybody out, from whoever was arrested. But made a deal to stay on the edge of the triangle and do that extraction. But I love the guy, Andrew Fung. I think he's hilarious. I think he brings like very much the humor, even though this episode needed none of that because it was funny on its own. But yeah, just seeing Casey back, he was a favorite of mine from 4A. So I'm glad that he was back as well.
Yeah, I loved seeing him too. So one of my next moments, it brings me back to season 1, and I'll tell you why. It's the moment when Doc brings Eamon to the circle of demons, the circle of fire at the end, and he drags him in chains. And the reason it felt like such a season 1 thing is because that moment is such a Bobo thing to do. Like Bobo spent a lot of season 1 in this circle of fire, shirtless, with his revenants gathered around. And so Doc bringing all the demons here, and all the demons literally say, like, why'd you call us here? So Doc has summoned all of these demons who I'm guessing are sort of like Eamon's like
henchmen.
Yeah, they kind of just follow him around. They call him boss. Like, they think he's the leader. But anyways, He drags Eamon there. And, I wasn't super upset about it. Like,
No.
Throughout the episode, I can remember thinking, I don't really like Eamon this episode.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Like, I thought he was way different than definitely last week.
Yeah.
But it was just weird. Like, from the jump, he was like he was like really crass to Wynonna. He tried to make Doc jealous.
Yeah, so Doc brings him there, and they're all like, what are we doing here? And he says that Eamon has not been treating them well, and that they almost died at the hands of Rotten Jack because their boss, aka Eamon, risked their lives to fudge a bet. I mean, even one of the demons says, oh yeah, he did lock us in when he ran off. Like, he locked them in there with Rotten Jack so that he could run off. And then Doc throws Eamon down, and the demons say, what do we do with him? And Doc says, I'm not your boss. Do whatever you want with him. And then they eat him? ?
I don't know what they do with him. They just I don't know. It was too, like, it was dark, and fire doesn't provide enough light, but I'm not sure. But yes, and that kind of takes us back to what we were discussing about Doc earlier, in that, like, he's not in other people's fights.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, listen, this is it. This guy treated you like crap. So you could do with him what you want, but I'm just letting you know that, like, it's here if you want it. but he wasn't getting into that fight. He's like, I'm not your boss. I'm not telling you what to do, but just know that now I'm wondering though, is Doc going to take over the glory hole?
I mean,
or is that
Deadly
just like
is running shorties. Doc could run the glory hole.
I'm just wondering because he kind of started the episode like as like a boss unto himself with like he had the poker game going on and things like that, unless they just kind of are going to do away with the glory hole because like you can't really have it around anymore because you can't really have patrons in there because of COVID. And
I think they'll keep it, but it is a good question to say what will happen to the glory hole if Eamon's not there. So we're assuming that Eamon is dead, right? Like that was a final, like.
I would say yes.
Okay. I don't think you can survive that. All right. So what you got?
I think that's it. I got all my top 5.
Are you sure you're not missing something?
No, you're not going to get me to say it. You are not going to get me to say it. I'll do it. Like you could do it as an honorable mention, but I got my 5 out.
Are you sure there's not a moment where someone walks out in an outfit that's maybe from season 1?
That's not for me. That's not.
All right. Well, listen, my last moment, and I'll use it. I'll round it all together and call that whole entire thing as a moment. My last moment was actually the ARP Sisters fire chat, just because I love when they're raw and together, when these like really sentimental moments. And we've already seen that Wynonna's going through some stuff. Seems like she's probably a little worried that people are leaving her. Waverly's getting married. Maybe she's scared that Waverly's not going to be there with her anymore. But Waverly assures her, like, Nicole's my person, but you're my sister and nothing will ever change that. And she says, you are and have always been my hero. And Wynonna says, it's easy when you know exactly who you're fighting for. And then someone walks up and says, what do we have here? Loitering on private property. And lo and behold, it's Nicole Hott in her season 1 uniform. And everyone dies.
Yeah. Except for me, because I'm a season 2 girl. Whatever. I have to admit something here. My sister, who has now become an Earper, she doesn't want to admit the title, but she is an Earper. She started watching the show. She's now started listening to this podcast. So hi. You could turn this off because I'm about to get sappy with you now. But you can listen, but this is one of the things that we never speak of again. When my sister was getting married, I had this kind of like abandonment thing, this issue of like, this is my best friend, like she's leaving me now. Where am I going to fit in? I had this feeling, and I understood right from the jump when Waverly was like, I need some Earp sister time because I don't want her to feel left out. And I really felt that from when I experienced it myself. And so I just wanted to put that out there. Hopefully my sister stopped listening to that. But if you want to talk about that other moment, we can get into that one.
Well, I mean, it's not really like a huge deal for me. I understand that the fandom went crazy over the return of the Stetson because it's been a thing that they've been asking for a long time. I just thought it was great that they incorporated it. I know that people have been telling Kat to try to get that incorporated for like since season 1.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was sweet that they at least were able to do that. I don't want to say that these are the last episodes, but if they are, like, it was good to be able to see that. And the fact that like Waverly at the beginning had requested the costume, so yeah. Nicole coming back from the big city with Rachel, she makes this plan to like go put on this old costume. So I just loved that there was a thoughtfulness there. She put on the costume, and I love the moment where Nicole says, can I steal her for a minute? And Wynonna's like, a minute? Woman, you better make her happy her whole damn life. Even though Wynonna is sort of scared of losing Waverly, I think she knows that Waverly's in good hands. And I think she knows that even if there are some differences, once they're married, there's some things that might be different. She knows that she's going to be taken care of, and she's got someone who's always going to have her back. So I just love that moment. And you really can't go wrong with an ARP Sisters fire chat. So
No.
it had to be in my top moment because I love it.
Okay. Everybody should like just thank her if they ever see her or talk to her, because she put those khakis back on for you, all of you. So I think that's it. So I think we can agree on 2, maybe 3 moments. One being, I think, Jeremy, his scene revealing all that had happened in the time that he was away with Black Badge and Robin. The Doc moment when he was talking to Casey about losing his love and really more of his kind of redemption arc. And a major moment in the episode itself was just like all of the Earp sister moments. I guess we can list one pre and post fog and one during fog, where they lost their memories. So that's 4 moments right there. And I guess just the Halloween, the essence of the Halloween backdrop could be number 5.
Well, that's our moments.
Do you guys agree with them? Do you disagree with them? Do you want to share your own top 5 moments? Leave us a comment. Allison, where can they find us?
Sure, you can find us on Twitter at ERP-Top5.
And you can find me. I'm at Laura Meet World on Twitter.
And I'm at Nona Wayhot on Twitter.
Have a great day. Bye.